One of the most startling things about IPCC, and this is going to transition me into talking about the mitigation strategies, is that for the first time they talked about a carbon budget. And one of the things that in this report, one of the things that's happened over time is it's become clear that there's a pretty simple relationship. You can choose your pathway in the future with temperature of the Earth that it's eventually going to reach, because you can choose how much carbon you're going to emit. And there's almost a linear relationship. This much carbon means this much temperature change. And for the first time, the IPCC took some of that information out of the literature and talked about this idea of a carbon budget. We choose how much carbon to emit given the temperature goal we want to reach. If we want to keep the 2 degrees C above pre-industrial temperatures, then we know how much carbon we can emit over time. And we've already used up 2/3 of that budget. So this is the key part of that. We don't have a lot of the budget left. And that's why the synthesis report that just came out last week said fossil fuels have to be phased out by the end of the century completely if we're going to stay within the 2 degrees C temperature mark, which is, some scientists would say, is already too far. But if we're going to use that as the basis, then fossil fuels have to be gone by the end of the century. And that means they're going to have to be cut, unless we're going to do something incredibly drastic later in the century, they're going to have to be cut in half by the middle of the century. And we've been wasting a lot of time. We've already wasted a couple decades getting started on that. So it gets harder and harder as time goes on. Okay, so now I'd like to get to the really interesting stories, and as well as some of the cautionary tales. And that's part of what I'm going to do. I'm going to talk about some of the successes, and I'm going to talk about some of the things I think we need to watch out for as we're moving forward changing the energy system, because we have both of those available to us as evidence, both the interesting stories and the cautionary tales. So I'm going to look at some of the things that are happening in Germany and Europe and take a look at what some of the countries have been able to do. One of the things I notice when I drive through Bavaria, which is in southern Germany, it's clear that something's going on. Bavaria is Texas in Germany. They would like to secede once in a while. They're extremely conservative politically. They complain about paying taxes to the capital in Berlin and all these other things that sound sort of familiar. I would say the difference is that the black gold that is in Bavaria is on the roofs of houses in the form of solar panels. Everywhere you go throughout this most conservative area of Germany, farmhouses and barns are covered with solar panels. I've counted, when I drive past, I try to count, but I can't count them. 100, 150, 200 solar panels on one very large roof, okay? Wind turbines tend to dominate the landscape in northern Germany, but the solar panels are in the south. Production of electricity from solar photovoltaics in Germany, not just in Bavaria, but in Germany as a whole, has increased by a factor of 100 in the last decade. A factor of 100. 2 decades ago, the US had the great majority of all solar photovoltaic capacity in the world. As of a decade ago, Germany had caught up and passed us. This is a remarkable transformation, especially since you have to realize, many of you probably do, that Germany's not a particularly sunny country. Even Bavaria, the southern part of Germany, has about 25% less sunlight than Ohio. If you compare on a map, then what you find is that Ohio compares most to Naples, Italy, for the amount of sunlight. If you put the same solar panels up here that you put up in Naples, Italy, you would get the same amount of electricity out. If you put them in Germany, you'd get 25% less sunlight, less electricity off those same solar panels. It's mainly characterized by just what's the latitude. And our latitude is much further south than Germany.